Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you might be. My name is Kevin Michael Grace, and this is the KMG show for Wednesday, November the 11th, 2020. And yes, I've put a backlight on me today, an attempt to deal with the lighting situation. If the fellow called Contracoup is around, I have a specific question for him. So if he could make himself known in the chat, I would appreciate that. But we're going to talk about, well, I guess we'll talk about the Drudge Report and how it is pretty much useless now unless you are never Trump and pulling your hair out over COVID-19. We're all going to die. I'll have more on that later. But wait a minute, I thought that because Joe Biden had been elected, or so they tell me, President of the United States, that COVID-19 was not the pandemic to end all pandemics. So where to go to instead of the Drudge Report for a news aggregator? There's a new site called citizenfreepress.com, which I'm trying out. It doesn't have the layout, leaves something to be desired, to put it mildly. It's as bald as one can imagine. There's also revolver.news, which has original stories on it, and I'm making use of that. So others might find it useful as well. And let's see here. Oh, yeah, let's get back to Twitter. This is from Steve Watson at summit.news. Twitter censored an unprecedented number of President Trump's posts Tuesday, labeling no less than 12 tweets with warnings that Trump's claims cannot be verified. The majority of the warnings stated, quote, "This claim about election fraud is disputed," unquote. The post contained videos and links to conservative news sources such as Newsmax and OANN. Yes, and even, let's say, rather anodyne tweets by the President of the United States have been had a warning sticker put on them. From Lucas Nolan at Breitbart, over the past 24 hours, Facebook and Twitter have labeled posts by President Trump at least 25 times for various reasons. In one case, Facebook labeled the president's post of his Veterans Day proclamation with the note, quote, "Joe Biden is the projected winner of the 2020 U.S. presidential election," unquote. His Veterans Day proclamation. Over the past 24 hours, President Trump saw his post labeled or censored 20 times on Facebook and 5 times on Twitter. Nearly all the labels questioned the president's comments relating to the U.S. presidential election, and many stated that Joe Biden was the projected winner of the presidency. And I'm looking at a tweet here now. Donald J. Trump, whitehouse.gov, proclamation on Veterans Day 2020. The White House, Americans, veterans have fought to defend our country, its values, etc., etc. And then, this is Facebook. Joe Biden is the projected winner of the 2020 presidential election. And what does that have to do with a Veterans Day proclamation? Facebook appeared to repeatedly inform those reading the president's Facebook page that a number of publications have projected that Joe Biden will win the presidential election, often on posts made by the president that didn't even relate to the election. Clicking on the label brings users to Facebook's Voting Information Center, which provides updates on the presidential election and lists which publications have projected the winner of the presidential election. Yeah. So again, why do Americans need an electoral college when they have Twitter and Facebook? They seem to be up to doing the job all on their Todd. But let's look at the current standings according to Real Clear Politics. which has Biden at 259 electoral votes and Trump at 217, with states it has not called being Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. Oh, they called Alaska for Trump, in the last few hours? And here are the percentages from Alaska: 56.9% for Trump and 39.1% for Biden. And yet it took 8 days after the election to call Alaska for Trump. If Trump or any other Republican candidate had lost Alaska, we would be looking at the blowout to end all blowouts. So it remains, how should we say, mysterious that this has happened. Here's a story from Ben Weingarten at the Federalists. If you thought Twitter's censorship of reported Joe Biden family corruption or frequent flagging of the US president's tweets were isolated incidents, think again. Big Tech's efforts to shield favored political figures and positions from scrutiny have only increased. You and I can find ourselves branded with censorious labels, even for sharing court documents containing sworn testimony should the offending share touch any of a growing number of third rails. Today, the integrity of the 2020 presidential election is the greatest third rail of all. I found that out this week when I tweeted screenshots of a summary of a sworn affidavit and a link to that affidavit delivered by Detroit poll challenger Zachary Larson. In the affidavit, Larson, a former Michigan Assistant Attorney General, claims to have witnessed several disturbing instances of fraud during the vote counting he watched on and after November the 3rd. The affidavit is part of a lawsuit pending before the Wayne County Circuit Court. Larson is joined by several other individuals in the lawsuit, including an employee of the city of Detroit and other poll challengers who likewise attest under penalty of perjury to a raft of alleged fraud and corruption during the vote processing and tabulating. These people put their names and necks on the line in coming forward in our charged political environment. A court will now determine whether their claims are sufficient to merit adjudication. Twitter, on the other hand, is in no position to do so. Yet after my tweet started circulating widely, suddenly the purported non-publisher stepped in and made its own ruling, quote, "This claim about election fraud is disputed," unquote. It slapped this flag on the tweet. Retweets meet a warning. One can now only share the tweet by adding text responding to it. Now, it is theoretically possible that my editorializing about the alleged corruption and criminality in the affidavit constituting third world stuff, and if that's true, every American should be outraged, represent disputed claims to Twitter. Even setting aside that, by this standard, Twitter would be a sea of flags. I would not bet that was Twitter's problem. One can see Twitter's real beef by clicking on its message. This sends one to a page that begins with the note, "Voter fraud of any kind is exceedingly rare in the US. Election experts confirm." Twitter establishes this official narrative by citing press reports, tweets, and selective summaries of testimony from federal officials. This official narrative is itself in dispute. Just this year, we saw a case in which the Board of Elections in New Jersey's third largest city of Paterson threw out nearly 20% of the votes in a mail-in election due to fraud. The U.S. Department of Justice also convicted a former Philadelphia judge of elections for perpetrating voter fraud from 2014 to 2016. Anyone with a modicum of knowledge about the history of urban political machines knows such activity has been a sad fact of American life for decades. Democrats lodged more than 100 lawsuits over the past year in an attempt to loosen identification requirements, increase the quantity of mail-in ballots, and widen the avenues by which they could be delivered. This is a testament to the concerns legislatures across the country have long had over voter fraud, concerns merited given the hundreds of other documented cases that have transpired. But this argument about voter fraud is irrelevant to the tweet at hand. Twitter's position has nothing to do with what an individual attests to in sworn testimony delivered to a state circuit court. Who is Twitter to be challenging these claims? Can it not handle any evidence that conflicts with its official narrative? Then why hasn't Twitter challenged any of the millions of other claims far more dubious and from sources far less credible? Has anyone seen Twitter retroactively append a warning label to slanderous tweets about Russiagate or any of the endless number of other debunked conspiracy theories meant to discredit and delegitimize President Donald Trump or concerning Justice Brett Kavanaugh's high school conduct? Twitter has stopped putting on airs. It is a publisher with a very clear slant. That is the slant of our political corporate media establishment. Big tech shows us that establishment cannot tolerate dissenting views from its prevailing orthodoxy, whether about the 2020 election, the Chinese coronavirus, climate change, or myriad other issues about which reasonable people of good faith can have completely conflicting views. Yes, and let's go back to this election, that it's determined. Because AP and NBC News and other worthies have said so. If you run into people, especially people on the right, who bemoan conspiracy theories and people who are in denial and how everyone has to get together and sing a kumbaya, remind these people forcefully, or as forcefully as you are able or you think is prudent, that these same people railing about conspiracy theories and misinformation were telling us slightly over a week ago that it takes weeks to count votes to certify an election, maybe more than weeks. Now that's all gone down the memory hole. Let's see what President Dr. Donald J. Trump has to say. There's a video he posted an hour ago. We will win. 20 minutes ago, I'm pleased to announce that I give my full support and endorsement to Ronna McDaniel to continue heading the Republican National Committee. With 72 million votes, we received more votes than any sitting president in U.S. history, and we will win. 22 minutes ago, everyone is asking why the recent presidential polls were so inaccurate when it came to me, because they are fake, just like much of the lamestream media. He retweeted Tucker Carlson. There is new information about dead people voting in the general election. We'll investigate tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox News. And Trump retweeted a video of ballots and garbage cans. Let's see if there's anything happening in the chat. Professor Pohl, hello. William Hicks, hello. Buddy, hello. Chogokin666 says, if Trump pulls this off, I will sing Zadok the priest in a falsetto wearing only a bishop's mitre. Jim Smith says, was never a reader of the Trump report, so don't feel the pain of many, much like the pain of losing Fox News. Both sites have been overrated for a long time. Let's see. I guess it was going back to about 1997 that I've been going to the Trump Drudge Report every day, sometimes several times a day, because it saved a lot of time. But that is no longer the case. Brandon Smith says, if there were any probability of consequences at all, would it even have been attempted? This has been brought up recently. These stupendous vote totals in places like Wayne County in Michigan, and the county where Philadelphia is located. It may be called Philadelphia County, I don't know. Is it likely that this voting fraud has been going on for decades, in fact? Because we're supposed to assume that there is an extraordinary high level of civic engagement amongst people who live in what is called the inner city. Does this seem likely to you? Does it seem likely to anyone? Chogokin666, he got the Tlingit vote. Yes. William Hicks, Alaska has a population of what, 500,000? Did they transport the ballots via the Iditarod? Yes. And here's another brain teaser. Steve Saylor has pointed this out. When we're looking at places like Wayne County, you have some of the highest voter concentrations in the United States. So why is it that these places are the last to dump votes onto the scale? Well, I got a pretty good reason why that is. Because they need to know how many votes to manufacture, to fake. So you leave it till the last. Yo Mama says, I don't think anybody has campaigned in Alaska since Nixon in 1960. Yes, and Nixon was criticized for this. It was an exhausting campaign for him. He got ill, cold, flu, or whatever, which was famously manifested in his televised debate appearance, where he was sweaty and shaking. And people associated with the Nixon campaign said that traveling to Alaska in order to campaign was a foolish waste of his resources and a unnecessary tax on his health. Metal Mike says, the show shut down, or is it on my end? I can't seem to play any video on YouTube right now. Okay. Hang on a second. No problems on my end, says Yo Mama. Okay. Okay. Well, some people are having problems with this. Brandon Smith, truckloads at 4 a.m. more. Where would these truckloads be coming from, by the way? YouTube is acting up, says Eric S. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead. And I'm going to go ahead just after a slight video adjustment here. Please forgive me. Yes, I was getting is the halo effect is even worse now. Okay. Well, I looked into devices to deal with this problem. And as I say, if Contraku enters the chat, the question I'd like to ask him about this. Okay, don't adjust, you will break YouTube. Okay, this is from Steve Watson at Summit News. With the media declaring Joe Biden president-elect and Biden himself forming a transitional team, it seems that his promise in September to allow the election to be independently certified before claiming victory was empty rhetoric. And there's a picture of him from Getty Images with Kamala Harris at a podium, which says President-elect, Office of President-elect. Biden is to the right. He is wearing a mask. Kamala isn't. And there is a huge banner behind that says Office of the President-elect, Joseph R. Biden Jr., and there's even a seal which they have devised. Of course, there is no such thing as the Office of the President-elect. And I thought he was just plain Joe. But now he's reverted to the New York Times style of Joseph R. Biden Jr. During the first presidential debate, Steve Watson writes, Biden was asked by Chris Wallace, will you urge your supporters to stay calm while the vote is counted, and will you pledge not to declare victory until the election is independently certified? While the question was clearly aimed at Trump, both candidates gave responses. Biden replied in the affirmative, pledging, we'll count the ballots. As you pointed out, some of these ballots in some states can't be opened until Election Day, and if there's thousands of ballots, it's going to take time to do it. Yes, just like any other Election Day. So much for that pledge. Biden gave a victory speech just 4 hours after the election, urging we're going to get right to work while votes are still being counted and lawsuits prepared. Biden has reportedly already been speaking with foreign leaders, a move which some charge as a breach of the Logan Act. The media gaslighting for Biden has reached levels never before witnessed. The latest example came Tuesday night with CNN's Chris Cuomo, labeling President Trump a dead man haunting the halls of a country in crisis. Sounds kind of cool, doesn't it? You say it like that. Cuomo played a clip of Barack Obama pledging a smooth transition between his and Trump's presidency in 2016, then proclaiming that from a president, and now we're hearing from Trump, who is no president. Well, you see, the thing is that Barack Obama was not running for a third term. That would be illegal. But no, there was no chance of him succeeding himself in 2017. So a bit apples and oranges here. He is a dissident at best and a revenant in the main, Cuomo added. Was he high? What was? He's a dissident at best and a revenant in the main. He continued, you have to keep that energy up too. You have to be outraged by this. If this dead man walking and his zombie pals in Congress are looking to make this transition into a complete horror show, the only thing that's going to stop them is the outrage of what they know just bit them in the behind at the polls, you coming out and being active like they did not expect. Yes, and that is what they call news in the United States. But of course, it's no different in my country. John Brennan, described as a former CIA head under the Obama administration. By the way, he voted for the Communist Party of the United States in the 1976 election. Yeah, that was, 20 years after Khrushchev's secret speech and 8 years after Prague Spring. So what was this guy thinking? Who was a supporter of the Communist Party of the United States in 1976? In any event, Brennan has called for President Trump to be removed now, saying he's capable of lashing out and releasing information that could endanger America. Speaking on CNN, Brennan essentially called for a coup, reasoning that Trump could declassify and release all the data related to Russiagate, the 2016 election, and the deep state's efforts to delegitimize his presidency. I'm very concerned what he might do in the remaining 70 days of office, Brennan told, wait for it, Chris Cuomo. Is he going to take some type of military action? Is he going to release some type of information that could, in fact, threaten our national security interests? If Vice President Pence and the cabinet had an ounce of fortitude and spine and patriotism, I think they would seriously consider invoking the 25th Amendment and pushing Donald Trump out, because he is just very unpredictable now. He said he's like a cornered cat. The normal simile is a cornered rat. He's going to lash out, and the fact that he has the powers of the presidency in his hands is quite worrisome. Yeah, and he has the power of the presidency until what? January 20th? That's even if he loses the election. Yeah. What was it that quackocracy? Oh, I see. Quackocracy has been lost again. But basically, he put it this way, that, here's another one of his accounts about Brennan, that Brennan was saying that this information about me can't be released because, I might end up in prison. And consider that. How could information, documents relating to 2016, that is to say the surveillance, illegal surveillance of Donald Trump and his campaign by the Obama administration, the FBI and Department of Justice, how could that hurt America's national security? Don't these people like to say that, if you've got nothing to hide, you have nothing to worry about? Madeline Osborne in The Federalist has 5 takeaways from the Senate probe of Andrew McCabe on the FBI's faulty Russia investigation. 1, he admitted he should not have signed the spy warrant. All of these people are coming forward saying, oh no, if I'd known then what I know now, I wouldn't have signed the spy warrant. Oh, don't you people fancy yourselves the intelligence community? Seems they got suckered pretty easily. Department of Justice Inspector General Michael Horowitz reported that he found 17 significant inaccuracies and omissions in the FBI investigation of Carter Page, and that the FBI failed to, quote, include exculpatory evidence in its 4 successful applications for surveillance warrants, unquote. He said, number 2, that Trump was a danger to national security. In his opening statement, McCabe denied the existence of bias or political leanings within the FBI, despite evidence such as text messages between FBI agent Peter Strzok and FBI lawyer Lisa Page, who were as close as this, as they say, promising to stop President Trump's election as president. We didn't open a case because we liked one candidate or didn't like the other one, McCabe said. We didn't open a case because we intended to stage a coup or overthrow the government. We opened a case because to find out how the Russians might be undermining our elections. McCabe denied leaks to the press. In a heated exchange, Senator Ted Cruz pressed McCabe on whether he went behind Comey's back to leak information about an investigation into the Clinton Foundation to the press. In 2018, the Horowitz report claimed that McCabe authorized leaks to the media with the intention of clearing his name or any supposed conflict of interest in the FBI's investigation into Hillary Clinton. When Cruz asked if McCabe was authorized to leak to the media, McCabe responded, "I didn't need James Comey's authorization. I didn't ask if you needed it. I asked, did he authorize you to disclose it? That's a yes or no question," Cruz pressed. McCabe said he himself authorized the disclosure, but also admitted that Comey was aware of his disclosure to the press as well. You're aware your testimony is 180 degrees opposite from Comey's sworn testimony to this committee, in which he insisted he has never authorized anyone to leak to the press. Cruz asked, "Your characterization of a leak is not accurate." Number 4, McCabe insisted there were no discussions of the Logan Act. How many decades ago it was when I first heard of the Logan Act? That there's a long tradition in American history of people who do not represent the government of the United States traveling to foreign countries and having talks with foreign leaders. And the Logan Act is always brought up. And I remember years ago becoming rather upset about this. Well, why aren't these people prosecuted under the Logan Act? Well, because it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. There's no one ever been convicted under the Logan Act. Number 5, McCabe believes he did nothing wrong. Under questioning from Senator Marsha Blackburn, McCabe doubled down on his belief he did nothing wrong, despite his earlier statement that if he had known then what he knows now about the fabricated FISA warrants, he would not have signed off on it. McCabe also cited the Inspector General's report, saying that it failed to find any evidence, documentary, or testimonial to indicate that the other mistakes in the FISA package were the result of intentional misconduct, aside from FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinsmith, who deliberately altered emails used to obtain the FISA warrants. "Do you think you were wrongly fired?" Blackburn asked. "Yes, I do think I was wrongly fired," McCabe said. "And you think you did nothing wrong?" Blackburn asked. "That's correct," McCabe replied. "Even though the IG pointed out that you did, and even though you had a culture of corruption and cover-up, that you thought it's okay to spy on Carter Page, it was okay to mislead Michael Flynn," Blackburn said. McCabe responded by categorically denying Blackburn's assertions. Yes, well, that's what they're going to keep doing. And of course, if Biden becomes president in January, this will be seen as a ringing official endorsement of this culture of treason at the CIA and the FBI. And there's no other way to describe it, really. This is from a Gab, a book of 5 rings. This whistleblower interview is nuclear. Hope you guys watch it. She is naming names. Actually, if you want to watch it, it is at twitch.tv/redpill78. She is naming names. This took place in Detroit. Here is the synopsis. This lady is an IT tech for Dominion voting systems sent to the polls to make sure the machines operate correctly and assist the workers. While there are obvious anomalies in the counter on one of the tabulating machines, resulting in hundreds of votes being counted numerous times. When reported to her boss, Nick Ikomakis, VP and co-owner, he took her aside and said, "The last thing we need is a problem, and we are here only to assist with IT, not help them run elections." There are 40 such machines running. She estimates thousands and thousands of anomalies like this just in that one location. If a reject ballot would not go through the machine, the employee would get a blank ballot and fill it out unsupervised and then forge the voter's signature. She witnessed this all day and all night. In a 24-hour shift, not a single ballot filled in this way was for Trump. There was a table that they called duplicate ballots for these, which numbered in the thousands. Two young guys in their 20s were responsible for inputting all the information from that location into the computer. There was no oversight of them. The two of them worked doubles all day and all night and were friendly with Nick. So of all the workers there, this whistleblower lady was the only Republican, which she kept a secret. Every other worker was disparaging of Trump the entire time and were wearing BLM stuff, "I can't breathe," etc. Also implicated in this mishandling was City of Detroit employees and supervisors, including Daniel Baker, doing forbidden things, such as going outside to smoke. It is supposed to be a contained building. They were in and out all through the shift with boxes of ballots just sitting on tables. City was supposed to provide food for the workers, but didn't have enough. Vans were brought in supposedly to bring food, but no food ever came out of the vans. They were completely unmarked vehicles. Whatever was being unloaded from the vans went out their back doors and up the stairs. As she was leaving her shift, turned on the car radio, then heard the announcement that all of the new ballots found in Detroit. So her assumption is that what was in the vans. One of the workers happened to be an old acquaintance who would disappear for hours at a time. He confided to her that they were not even trained. This is from Vox Day, and he is quoting from Steve Cortez. In Georgia, among ballots that only voted for president and no other races, these are the number of votes. Trump, 818, Biden, 95,801. How about that, huh? How about that? Now, 818 solely voted for Trump. They had no interest in any other of the positions in Georgia, like Senate seats, right? No, and we're really supposed to believe that. Vox Day says it looks like the carelessness of the culprits will allow coders to not only catch them, but prove their treasonous fraud beyond any shadow of a reasonable doubt by recreating it from the data. This is a quote. I made a script to run through the data and gather all instances where votes switched from Trump to Biden. Lost votes means that the total amount of votes counted decreased by that amount throughout the counting. Let's see. This is from Dominion Voting Systems, of which we were speaking just a minute ago. Pennsylvania switched 221,000 votes and lost votes 941,000. New Jersey switched 80,000. Florida switched 21,422, but the number of lost votes in New Jersey was only 20 and only 456 in Florida. Michigan switched 20,000 votes, lost votes 22,000. New York switched 18,000, lost votes 623,000. Georgia switched 17,000 votes, lost votes 34,000. Virginia switched votes 12,000, lost votes 790,000. Keep in mind that this does not count fraudulent Biden votes. We already know that Biden received more than 100,000 fake votes in Hennepin County based on the historical voting totals. If that is combined with the 196,000 lost votes, almost certainly consisting of mostly Trump votes, it's entirely possible that Trump won Minnesota too. Update: Georgia is now holding its first ever election audit, not recount, audit. Yeah. Exclusive Michigan witness says many faked ballots in Detroit, zero Trump ballots, even among military. These are some headlines from the Gateway Pundit. Breaking exclusive: Open Records request finds no invoices or work orders on reported Election Day water main break in Atlanta. Oh, is that the route they're going to go? Oh, not a lightning strike? It was a water main break, which somehow causes glitches on computers. This is from 6:06 p.m. Biden's lead in Arizona cut to 12,828 after latest ballot dump favors President Trump. And as mentioned before, media finally calls Alaska for Trump 8 days after the election. And the probability of a Republican candidate, any Republican candidate, losing the state of Arizona. Well, I'm trying to think of things offhand in the real world which are more improbable, but I'm running a blank on that. Again, from the Gateway Pundit, Project Veritas Tuesday night released a video with USPS whistleblower Richard Hopkins asserting that he did not recant his allegations of election fraud, a lie that was published by the Washington Post. Additionally, James O'Keefe posted recordings of federal agents attempting to coerce and intimidate Hopkins into recanting. The tactics used to coerce and intimidate the USPS whistleblower is something that you would see in a communist country. Hopkins made waves when he went on record about Postmaster Rob Weisenbach's orders to backdate ballots to November 3rd in Erie, Pennsylvania, so that late ballots would be accepted. Mail-in ballots must be postmarked by Election Day to be considered valid and counted per U.S. law. In the newly released recording, Agent Russell Strasser says, "I'm trying to twist you a little bit. We have senators involved. We have the Department of Justice involved. We have..." Hopkins interjects that Trump's lawyers have also been in contact with him. I'm trying to twist you a little bit because in that, believe it or not, your mind will kick in, Strasser says. We like to control our mind. And when we do that, we can convince ourselves of a memory. But what is this, MK Ultra? But when you're under a little bit of stress, which is what I'm doing to you purposely, your mind can be a little bit clearer. And we're going to do a different exercise, too, to make your mind a little bit clearer. So this is all on purpose, Strasser said. Project Veritas on Wednesday afternoon released the raw and unedited video. There have been a number of Project Veritas exposés, of which I'm sure you've heard of quite a few. The reaction to the media is either this never happened, it was faked. Okay. You have the man in front of the camera saying this. Oh, well, it's out of context, it's irrelevant, or ultimately, who cares? That's the result. And what they're saying, oh, he recanted, oh, and he got paid $130,000 from Donald Trump, etc., etc., etc. William Briggs writes today, the media can't make up its mind, not about Trump, whom they loathe, because the man called them out for what they are. They can't bear their power, which is real and devastating, being challenged. No, it's not Trump they're indecisive about. They can't keep their story straight about voting fraud. For nearly 4 years, the media declared that voting fraud was perpetrated by Russia on the behalf of Trump. The election was stolen. There was fraud. This fraud was certain beyond all doubt, and anybody who didn't agree was a bad person. We were told this again and again, and then again some more. True, the media never said exactly how this fraud was supposed to have been worked. Did Russia send a cruise ship full of Borises and Natashas, adept at disguises, to infiltrate polling places and pull levers for Trump? Did the KGB send out mind-controlled waves via satellites to discourage voting for Hillary? Did Putin threaten to cease sending his country's best players to the NHL unless Democrat governors accidentally lost Hillary's mail-in votes? We'll never know because the media never said, but it had to be something. They insisted on it. Fraud was pervasive. No polling location was spared. Voting fraud, the media implied, was easy and common. And we believe them, as we should. They are the media, guardians of our democracy, noble, selfless beings who only have our best interests at heart. They would never lie, hyperventilate, exaggerate, or omit, right? Because they assured us voting fraud is simple and common, it was only natural that we started looking for evidence of it in this election. After all, the initial reported results made little sense. We saw in Michigan and Pennsylvania, for instance, Trump drawing massive enthusiastic crowds to his rallies, whereas Biden, even with the help of Obama, could only gather lackluster handfuls. Yet we were asked to believe that not only did Biden beat Trump, but Biden in many cases outdistanced Obama himself, the immaculate one. Voter fraud was at least a plausible explanation for this. The media said that it happened all too often, so why not here too? Even the media agreed with this possibility. It's true, one report was from Philly Mag, as mainstream a source as you can get. Now, Philadelphia, like many large cities, is broken up into precincts. They said, quote, voter turnout in 20 of the wards was 97% and greater. That is 97% of the bloated voter rolls that probably include dead people. Zombies are in these days, and in Philadelphia, they vote, unquote. The magazine admitted voter fraud in this fine city was as common as rain and just as well known. They gave for instance, in 2008, Acorn was caught red-handed filling voter rolls with names out of the phone book and false signatures, while Black Panther members intimidated voters with billy clubs. It is the case again this year with questionable turnout, vote returns, voter rolls, poll place shenanigans, and the Black Panthers encore. Even stranger was that the election saw in 59 precincts no votes going to the Republican presidential candidate. Zero, the magazine emphasized. So this may be, it could be that people are looking in the wrong place here, or that the story is rather different and significantly different than the skeptics about Biden's election have been purporting. That is to say, as I mentioned earlier, what happened on November the 3rd is simply business as usual. There is always been a lot of voter fraud on behalf of the Democrats in recent decades, but this time around, there was a whole lot more of what was already a lot. Well, there it is, Briggs says. Voter fraud, clear as day, just like the media insisted was both true and permeating, only, drum roll, this report was about Obama Romney in 2012. Now, of course, the media have switched. Now we learned that we were always at war with East Asia. Now the New York Times tells us election officials nationwide find no evidence of fraud. Now they tell us stories about voting fraud or disinformation. The BBC assures us mail-in ballots can't be used fraudulently, not anymore. That is. The Brennan Center for Justice says voter fraud is a myth. Reuters has an explainer in which they patiently lay out to readers still deluded by reports of being at war with Oceania that voter fraud is extremely rare. ABC also says extremely rare. Meanwhile, John Podesta insisted, quote, Donald Trump's associates may have colluded with Russian hackers to win the election, unquote. No, wait, that's old news and doesn't count. Never mind. Yeah, never mind. Because it would be irresponsible to make a fuss about this, especially at, when we're in the midst of a unity drive. Of course, the unity drive is going on at the same time that lists are being prepared, and we're being told that anyone, up to and including voters who have supported Donald Trump, are going to pay a steep price for their perfidy. What movie is under review tomorrow? I could go watch that. It is Who Framed Roger Rabbit. That is the movie tomorrow. Still buffering on my Android, says Cadwell. Check the outrage map. The whole Northeast USA, outage map. The whole Northeast USA is hosed. Power outages? Tubin fired at the New Yorker. Hooray, hooray, hooray. Apparently there is a line that members of the elite can cross. Manfred von Thistlebaum says, I'm in the Midwest and the site is working except for the video. Sorry, KMG, your show won't play for me. It's working for me in Ontario, says Jules Roy. Hang on a second here. I'm going to put this up there to deal with this hideous video representation. Contra-coup yesterday advised me to look into an LED webcam light. And so I put some examples from a local supplier. And if anyone is knowledgeable about this, I would appreciate it if they could tell me that, if this is what Contra-coup was talking about, and two, if there's any particular thing that's listed on that page which would be the best for me. What else do we have here? The stream is down. The chat must rise to the challenge. Okay, must be network problems. I can email. Oh, okay. Their Contra-coup is in the chat. Well, you could email me the link, or you could take a look at the link that I put up there and tell me, again, one, if this is what you were referring to yesterday, and two, if you have any favorites amongst what you see on display from Best Buy Canada. Let's get back to it here. Yeah, it strikes me just now, going back to what I just said about how we seem to be learning that massive voter fraud is endemic in the United States for the Democrats and has been for decades, that it is not useful for the Democrats to have cheated so rampantly in this election. They could have just written off Joe Biden as a bad candidate, even worse than Hillary Clinton. But then there is that problem of the ongoing coup starting from 2016. And when you have people like McCabe and Brennan and Comey and so many more, right up to the top of Loretta Lynch, perhaps, and maybe, Obama himself and Biden being criminally indicted, well, I guess they had to steal the election at all cost, any cost. This is from Susan Berry at Breitbart. Connecticut GOP House Representative Craig Fishbein was declared the loser in the race for his seat until a town clerk found an error had caused the race to be called for his Democrat opponent. Wallingford Town Clerk Barbara Thompson said Tuesday her office discovered that votes had not been recorded in the state's reporting system from Yalesville Elementary School, reported CT Mirror. The school is one of 9 polling places in the 90th House District that includes Wallingford and Cheshire. I can't answer if it was a clerical error or a computer error in the elections management system. All we know is that we caught it yesterday and amended it. Computer errors. Computers don't make errors. Software can be bad. Presumably, software has been tested many times before it is used. But this idea, we seem to be going with this idea that it's like HAL in 2001. Oh, I see the satellite there has gone wonky. There's nothing wrong with the satellite. Oh my God, HAL is making mistakes. But the HAL series has never made a mistake. Oh my God, what do we do now? Well, as we learned in 2001, that HAL was sentient, and HAL had decided that the crew of the ship, the human element, couldn't be trusted and must be eliminated. Computers just don't, the glitches, no, sorry. That doesn't happen. That's not how computers work. They can break down, and I'm sure most people have had computers. You start getting these weird error messages and blue screens or whatever, which indicates that your hard drive is about to crash. But that's a different kind of thing. From Hannah Blow at Breitbart, Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger on Wednesday announced that the state will conduct a by-hand recount in each county in the Peach State. This audit is mathematically designed to catch anomalies that would arise from misconfigured machines, procedural errors, or intentional attack. However, due to the narrow margins, Raffensperger is requiring a by-hand recount in all 159 counties. With the margin being so close, it will require a full by-hand recount in each county. This will help build confidence, he said, adding that it will be an audit, a recount, and a recanvass all at once. It will be a heavy lift, but we will work with the counties to get this done in time for our state certification. And I'm assuming that there's going to be an awful lot of observers there, not just from the Republican Party, but from the state of Georgia as well, which will make cheating far more difficult. Yes, I was amused by this today as well. Banner headline in the New York Times: election officials nationwide find no fraud. I'm reminded of what Mandy Rice Davis once said during the Profuma scandal. It was a denial for someone involved. And Mandy said, well, he would say that, wouldn't he? Which became a catchphrase in Britain. Wolf Blitzer tweeted, check out the front page banner headline in the Wednesday morning New York Times. Well, that's official then, isn't it? Someone on Twitter called Emperor Constantine responded, after hearing reports of a bank robbery, I met the bank robber and asked him if he robbed that bank. He said no, he didn't. Oh, yes, Sam Harris. He's a famous skeptic, is he not? Isn't he one of the most skeptical of the skeptics? He tweeted, a reminder that literally no one is saying that credible accusations of election fraud should be ignored. And I responded, no true Scotsman fallacy, because that's what it is. I'll read the definition of this if you're not familiar with it from Wikipedia. Excuse me. No true Scotsman or appeal to purity is an informal fallacy in which one attempts to protect a universal generalization from counterexamples by changing the definition in an ad hoc fashion to exclude the counterexample. Rather than denying the counterexample or rejecting the original claim, this fallacy modifies the subject of the assertion to exclude the specific case or others like it by rhetoric, without reference to any new specific objective rule or criterion, as in no true Scotsman would do such a thing, i.e., those who perform that action are not part of our group, and thus criticism of that action is not criticism of the group. Philosophy professor Bradley Dowden explains the fallacy as an ad hoc rescue of a refuted generalization attempt. The following is a simplified rendition of the fallacy. Person A, no Scotsman puts sugar on his porridge. Person B, but my Uncle Angus is a Scotsman and he puts sugar on his porridge. Person A, but no true Scotsman puts sugar on his porridge. And this fallacy was first identified by the British philosopher Anthony Flew. So Sam Harris, the skeptic's skeptic, says that no credible accusations of election fraud should be ignored. What would constitute a credible accusation of election fraud to Sam Harris? Because we have people who were working at the polls saying that there was fraud. But they're not credible, are they? So no, there are no credible accusations of election fraud, and anyone who would make such an accusation is not a credible person. Oh, yes. Here's some more from Sam Harris, the skeptic. He's responding to Brett Weinstein. Let me remind you that bad faith changes everything. We are not dealing with remotely good faith actors, and we need to be aware of the costs of giving them the benefit of the doubt where no honest doubt remains. We're supposed to forget what happened in 2015, 2016. Donald Trump. Are you kidding me? He's not a serious candidate. He doesn't even want to be president. It's just he wants to raise the profile of his brand. Oh, he wouldn't even serve if he were elected. He's going to drop out of the race. He's going to lose to Hillary Clinton by margins bigger than Mondale losing in 1976 or Goldwater losing in 1964. And then when he wins, he didn't win the election. It was stolen. Putin stole it. We have proof. We have incontestable proof. Oh, and we're going to impeach him. We're going to impeach Trump because he stole the election. He was a puppet for Putin. And then, oh, here's the indictment from the House of Representatives. Oh, I'm looking forward to all the juicy stuff about Russia in there. There isn't any. Nothing. Newt. Nada. Zilch. Oh, so who is guilty of bad faith here, Sam Harris? These people seem to be determined to incite a civil war because they're asking you to forget, to put behind you everything that they have said for 4 years. No, it would be outrageous to bring that up because, what, it never happened? Well, it did happen. And you're still saying that Trump stole the election in 2016. I see that Sam Harris is the author of The End of Faith. Well, if he is an exemplar of reason, then perhaps we've come to the end of that faith. I'm back now. I must say, Kevin is ascending to beatified status. Ugh. That's just, sorry, I'm going to have to deal with this again to the best of my ability. I'll be back in like 10, 15 seconds. That, and we'll go with that. That seems to be marginally better. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Oh, still buffering. Okay. Q Storm has arrived. YouTube on endless buffering. Batten down the hatches. I'm not a Q acolyte. Your mama says Kevin is backlit. This must be a Spielberg film. As I say, I am working on solving this problem. Baffled by the appeal of Sam Harris, at least some other skeptics had some charisma. Metal Mike says, do you have a Microsoft update pending? Not the Microsoft updates on my computer are automatic. So that shouldn't be a problem. My YouTube came back after I let the update run. I got an Overlook Hotel watch strap today. The Shining. Kevin would like it. I'm going to be talking about Stanley Kubrick on Friday. David Mickish's critical review of his career. More his career than his life, but there's a fair amount about his life in it. Toronto and Peel are on the verge of a lockdown. Yeah, but Kevin spoils the plot of 2001. Yeah. I may have mentioned this before, but, back in ye olden days, when I was a youth, movies used to play for a long time. You see ads in the papers, now in the 30th week, now in the 50th week, now in the 100th week. Dr. Zhivago played for, over 2 years, maybe 3 years in the same theater on Cambie Street, Vancouver. 2001 played for a long time. It was out a long time before I saw it. And I was living in this garden apartment complex in North Vancouver, and I'd catch snatches of conversations, and they pretty much all the same. They went like this, like someone was saying, well, like there's this big rock in the movie, and the rock is like God. And I thought, wow, I have to see this movie. There's a fault in the AE35. Okay, have a good evening, says Glib. I'm sorry you had trouble watching this. All right, was Kubrick off because he was about to expose the fake moon landing? Yeah. There was a French documentary that came out about 15 years ago on this, which was really quite good. But there were various giveaways in it, particularly the naming of people in it. Look, there's all sorts of reasons why Kubrick didn't fake the moon landing. There were several moon landings. If Kubrick had faked the moon landing, they wouldn't have looked like garbage on your television set, because that's what it looked like. Okay, the rock was a cell phone. Okay, Chogokin666, Quachulango guy. What is this? War-drived Portland riots and collected incredible network data revealing leadership, cadres, funding, etc. James Kirkpatrick writes in VDare, the Dem mainstream media complex is infuriated that President Donald J. Trump will not concede the 2020 election. This is a sign of contradiction that he is doing the right thing. This does not yet mean that Trump won enough votes in key states, as Tucker Carlson has noted. But we also can't say with confidence that Trump lost. And here appears to be solid evidence that there was at least some wrongdoing, far more so than for the Russia hoax that paralyzed Trump's administration for 3 years. The same neoconservatives who are demanding Trump concede would be insisting the U.S. invade another country to bring democracy if we saw its government behaving this way. Ultimately, the entire battle is about who is sovereign in this country, American citizens or the Dem MSN complex, including the big tech oligarchs. They ensured it was not a free and fair election, and President Trump should never concede. Let's consider the almost hysterical fury from the MSN, telling us that President Trump has a duty to admit defeat because Biden won. And he gives examples saying that there are countless others. Oh, here's one that stands out. No modern presidential candidate has refused to concede. Here's why that matters. By Amy McKeever of National Geographic. I thought that National Geographic was a magazine printed on heavy stock paper that was full of pictures of people from exotic lands, exotic people and exotic landscapes. I know that's not true because they had an infamous cover a couple of years ago about 52 different kinds of genders. In fact, Kirkpatrick continues, of course, Trump isn't doing anything illegal. No one has won or lost. Senator Mitch McConnell may be afraid to defy Trump because he doesn't want to lose the 2 Senate seats in Georgia and thus his status as majority leader. But he's absolutely right when he says that the Electoral College determines the winner. And until that happens, anyone who is running for office can exhaust concerns. As of this writing, Arizona, Alaska, Pennsylvania, Georgia, all undecided. North Carolina was just called for Trump, and Joe Biden's lead in Arizona is narrow and shrinking dangerously. Trump has a strong legal case in the key state of Pennsylvania, where it appears that the state Supreme Court simply created a new power to count votes that arrived after Election Day. The U.S. Supreme Court, without Amy Coney Barrett, deadlocked over this, but the Trump campaign will almost certainly take this case to SCOTUS again. There are fundamental issues at stake. Thanks to the MSN complex's campaign of COVID-19 hysteria, the country engaged in massive experiment with mail-in voting. Different state requirements added to the confusion. There have been specific claims of outright fraud, notably the inclusion of dead people on the voter rolls, reports that local officials gave voters instructions that would invalidate their ballots, and open theft of ballots. And I don't need to go any further because I've been talking about this for several days. I've just mentioned that this has become commonly cited, that the U.S. State Department's notification or explanation or claim that the last Ukrainian election before the U.S. government decided to replace the government of the Ukraine with a strange coalition of Jewish oligarchs and neo-Nazis. They listed all of these reasons why the election was illegitimate, and strangely enough, all of those reasons are applicable to Joe Biden's supposed victory on November 3rd. Kirkpatrick continues, with his back to the wall, Trump can and should fight. Even now, he has a popular movement behind him. All he needs to do is lead them against the system that they thought they had defeated in 2016. And I can tell you, constantly going on about how they were going to ruin everyone who supported Trump and that they were going to send Trump and all of his family to prison, that's not a good tactic if you're looking for people to surrender. I was asked about Nixon, or Pat Buchanan pointed to Nixon in his recent column, pointing out that Nixon knew very well of the fraud which had turned Illinois and Texas for the Democrats in 1960, thus defeating him. But that Nixon, as he first explained in his book, Six Crises, decided not to make a fuss about this for the good of the country. Yeah, and what good did it do Nixon? Was he treated nicely, fairly, when he ran for governor of California in 1962? No, he was not. 14 years after he decided to do the right thing, he was garroted by his enemies and dismissed from the White House in disgrace. There is no point in negotiating civilly with people whose attitude is that what's ours is ours and what's yours is ours. There's simply no point in it, unless you're a conservative, of course, because then it makes perfect sense, because being a conservative is all about losing. Joy Pullman at the Federalist, 12 ways for Trump to bomb the battlefield while Biden claims the presidency. Number one, immediately release all Spygate documents, which the President of the United States has the power to do. It's not just he says release them, he can force the release of them. Two, pardon Russiagate victims like Mike Flynn. Three, fire Chris Wray, who's the FBI director. Four, every Trump appointee should be taking down names and files, making lists of anyone who worked for or supported him to purge and harass them until the ends of their lives. 5, release all paper trails for likely Biden appointees. 6, fire Dr. Anthony Fauci, who the author describes as a double-dealing political hack who has devastated his country, insisting it is moral to sacrifice an entire nation to stop a single virus with a survivability of 99.95% for the working and school-age population, that is to say, those younger than 70. 7, publish all internal deliberation about COVID response among federal agencies and task forces. 8, publish all information about a COVID vaccine. 9, release all information about supposed investigations of Planned Parenthood traffic in human body parts. 10, prepare all election lawsuit documents for release ASAP. 11, accelerate the wall and prepare for the caravans. 12, get American soldiers home by Christmas. Sound like pretty good ideas to me. Let's hear from the other side, from Politico. The firing of Defense Secretary Mark Esper kicked off a rapid-fire series of high-level departures at the Pentagon on Tuesday, setting off alarms on Capitol Hill that the White House was installing loyalists to carry out President Donald Trump's wishes during an already tense transition. He's still the president. Imagine the audacity of this man installing loyalists. Oh my God, he could still bring the troops home from Afghanistan. But no, it's been decided, it's been voted for that this is a forever war. Was that Max Boot was a crazy name, crazy guy, was talking about American troops being in Afghanistan for 300 years. But anyway, back to Laura Seligman and Daniel Lippman at Politico. In a quick succession, top officials overseeing policy, intelligence, and the defense secretary's staff all had resigned by the end of the day Tuesday, replaced by political operatives who are fiercely loyal to Trump and have trafficked in deep state conspiracy theories. Oh, like the deep state conspiracy theory that the U.S. military has no plan for winning in Afghanistan. Trump put it to them famously, outrageously, supposedly. Okay, so you guys got no plan for winning? Then why are we there? Then why the hell are we there? Fears continue to swirl over what these newly installed leaders will do as Trump fights the results of last week's election. And after he has shown he is willing to use troops to solve political problems. You mean as they were used in 1968 or as they were used in 1957 when an airborne division was sent to integrate the public schools of Little Rock, Arkansas, which is pretty right up near the top of one of the best things that happened during the civil rights days. But no, you're never supposed to use troops to solve political problems. Tuesday's exodus led one top Democrat to accuse the administration of gutting the Pentagon in a way that could be devastating for national security. It is hard to overstate just how dangerous high-level turnover at the Department of Defense is during a period of presidential transition, said House Armed Services Chair Adam Smith. If this is the beginning of a trend, the president either firing or forcing out national security professionals in order to replace them with people perceived as more loyal to him, then the next 70 days will be precarious at best and downright dangerous at worst. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. First came the resignation of James Anderson, the Pentagon's acting policy chief, after repeatedly clashing with the White House over the installation of Trump allies in the department. That paved the way for retired Brigadier General Anthony Tata to take over policy on a temporary basis. Tata, a Fox News regular. Oh, boo! But wait a minute, Fox is on Biden's side now. Oh, apparently Tata is no fan of President Obama. Ooh, he said something really spicy about Islam, quote, the most oppressive, violent religion I know of. Ooh, he said some mean things about Nancy Pelosi and Maxine Waters. Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut expressed shock that Tata would be in charge of policy. Well, yeah. So what does this tell us? I think that it tells us that Trump is doing the right thing. Because if all of these people are howling in pain, then it's got to be the right thing. The sign of contradiction, as James Kirkpatrick called it. An explanation here, a sign of contradiction in Catholic theology is someone who, upon manifesting holiness, is subject to extreme opposition. The term is from the biblical phrase, sign that is spoken against, found in Luke 2:34 and Acts 28:22, which refer to Jesus Christ and the early Christians. Contradiction comes from the Latin contra, against, and dicere, to speak. Let's see what Scott Adams has to say. Oh, this is from Jack Posobiec. Gina Haspel is blocking Trump's request to declassify Russiagate intelligence, saying it will cause damage to our foreign allies. Ooh, would it be embarrassing to Britain? Would it be embarrassing to find out how much Britain was involved in conjuring up this Steele or Piss dossier? Again, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, Trump does not need Gina Haspel's approval to do this. And of course, he can fire her, which has been predicted for quite some time. Scott Adams says, most of the political news now fits into the category of true but misleading. It takes fact-checking out of the game. The worst take in politics right now is that because past recounts have found few problems, you can be confident it will be the same this time. That could turn out to be right, but it is still stupid. Nora O'Donnell had tweeted, CDC said that even a 15% increase in mask wearing throughout the U.S. could save $1 trillion in economic losses and avert future shutdowns. Adams says not credible, and I am pro-mask. Given that we no longer have any credible institutions in the country, I will tell you who is the legitimate president when the dust settles, unless someone has a better idea. The most corrupt institutions and individuals in America have declared that the election was free of fraud, and that's good enough for me. What's wrong with the rest of you? Yeah, it's not like of course these people have to be trusted. Why wouldn't they be trusted? Oh, because of Russiagate? No, see, the reason that Russiagate fell apart is not important, because there was the Ukraine, where there was a conversation that this guy talked. There was a whistleblower, and there's some lieutenant colonel who was born in the Ukraine, and he talked about it. And he said the same thing that Trump, when he released the transcript of the conversation. Yeah. Let's see what Banana Republican KG has to say. Yes, again, the recantation is false. Joe Biden is not getting top-level national security information until the GSA ascertains that he officially defeated President Donald Trump. The Office of Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, has confirmed. Even if Trump does not succeed, and this is Whitepill Wednesday, so he is going to succeed, but isn't this just so exciting, just so satisfying, so delicious even, to see a man who is actually fighting back? Oh, well, they do it, but we can't do it because that wouldn't be fair. Where does your fairness get you? Where has it ever gotten you? The Quackocracy says if Trump loses, they'll exile him to a small island in the Florida Keys, upon which he will escape and gather an army around him as he marches to Washington, D.C. Washington Post, the monsters parade of pickup trucks entered South Carolina today, but he will never reach Virginia. Yes, there was a meme that went viral a couple of days ago of Twitter reminding us that the Corsican ogre has reached the mainland of France, but he will never reach Paris, which is a reference to a story which may be apocryphal. It's a series of newspaper headlines in France. First, upon learning of Napoleon's escape from exile, then his landing on the mainland. And at first, the headlines are, that guy, loser, monster, etc., no hope. And the closer he gets to Paris, well, the narrative changes. And then by the time that Napoleon enters Paris in a triumph, or re-enters Paris in triumph, the media is supporting him deliriously. See what J5 Killer has to say. Today, the White House hosted a conference of nearly 200 Native American and Alaska Native veterans, active duty service members, and state, local, and tribal veterans champions to honor the long legacy of military service of the Native American and Alaska Native community. J5 Killer comments, the great white chief in Washington has summoned the war chiefs. Pick up your lances, mount your ponies, and ride. The war path beckons. A limerick from Laconic. There once was a gaggle of blue Brahmins who were as crooked as a deal with the Bidens, so they doctored the vote with the help of the woke, but they forgot that Trump always wins. Simply by winning, Trump has converted the entire Democratic establishment and their voters into losers with the typical loser's mindset. The GOP, formerly the Washington Generals of politics, are conversely being taught to win by Trump. And he's got some screen caps here from the time that Trump was on Jimmy Kimmel's show, and they had some yucks together with a book about winners and losers in the style of Dr. Seuss. You may remember that. That's before Jimmy Kimmel and his opposite number at NBC decided that, oh no, Donald Trump, he's the wickedest man in the world, the wickedest man in the world. I'm so ashamed for having been civil to him last year. Matt Couch tweets, Rudy Giuliani has confirmed whistleblowers from Dominion voting systems come forward. Perhaps the most profound thing I've seen today from Indigenous Denisovan, the media isn't there to cover the fraud. The media is there to commit the fraud. This is off topic, but just to give you an idea of how the wokesters are feeling their oats. This is from The Rap yesterday by Humberto Gonzalez. Critics call Ron Howard's Hillbilly Elegy laughably horrendous, worst film of his career. The drama, based on J.D. Vance's best-selling memoir, will land in select theaters and Netflix November the 24th. It's got a 20% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes and 41 on Metacritic. The film follows J.D. Vance, a former Marine from Southern Ohio and current Yale law student, who was on the verge of landing his dream job when a family crisis forces him to return to the home he's tried to forget. J.D. must navigate the complex dynamics of his Appalachian family, including his volatile relationship with his mother, Bev, Amy Adams, who's struggling with addiction. Fueled by memories of his grandmother, Mama, played by Glenn Close, the resilient and whip-smart woman who raised him, J.D. comes to embrace his family's indelible imprint on his own personal journey. Oh, let's see. The Rap's own Alonso Dulrade said, it isn't interested in the systems that create poverty and addiction and ignorance. It just wants to pretend that one straight white guy's ability to rise above his surroundings means that there's no excuse for everyone else not to have done as well. That's what Alonso Dulrade has to say. Oh, ooh, straight white guy, boo, double boo, boo. Let's see, who is this Alonso Dulrade? He's written about film for Movie Line Salon and NBC, MSNBC.com. He also co-hosts the Linoleum Knife podcast and regularly appears on Who Shot Ya and Breakfast All Day. Senior programmer for the Outfest Film Festival in Los Angeles. He is also consultant for the USA Film Festival Dallas, where he spent 5 years as an artistic director, a former arts and entertainment editor at The Advocate. And he is the author of 2 books, Have Yourself a Movie Little Christmas and 100 Must-See Movies for Gay Men. If you are old enough, you remember that we were told that, tolerance was the thing. You may not agree with these homosexual men and women, but you have to tolerate them. Because our society is built on tolerance. Live and let live. Isn't it funny now that we're in the position that we have to beg for tolerance? Because straight white guys, don't you just hate them? They're the worst. Let's see, Matt Goldberg of Collider said that Ron Howard has arguably made the worst film of his career with a banal, trite story of family dysfunction devoid of any nuance or normalcy. Okay. Everything about Netflix's Hillbilly Elegy movie is awful, wrote Alyssa Wilkinson for Vox. Let's see, Justin Chang in the Los Angeles Times called it an unwieldy slop bucket of door-smashing, child-slapping, husband-immolating histrionics. Barry Hertz didn't like it, thought it was terrible. David Ehrlich hated it. I'm sensing a trend here. Perhaps movies about those sort of people, white trash, deplorables, you might call them. They simply shouldn't be made. How many gay stories remain untold? How many touching stories of gay immigrants, perhaps differently abled gay immigrants, are yet to be told? This is just to give you a flavor of what life in America is going to be like under a Biden administration. Because these people, and yes, I will call them these people, are going to recognize no restraints on the behavior, on what they say and what they do. Today is Veterans Day in the United States. It's also Remembrance Day in Canada. Veterans Day, I suppose, plays a second fiddle to Memorial Day in May. But Remembrance Day is a national holiday in Canada, and it is arguably a more important day for Canadians than our generic national holiday, Canada Day. Canada Day has been given over to the celebration of immigrants because they are just so much better than us. Whereas Remembrance Day is a remembrance of the old Canada, which is an embarrassment for our elite, for our governments, because if you look at the soldiers who fought for Canada in the First and Second World War, they don't look like the new Canadians who are not yet a majority of the country, but have been acting like they are a majority for quite some time. This is from the Canadian Press. Military's aid in COVID-19 fight noted as pandemic restricts Remembrance Day events. The sacrifices of Canadians past and present were honored alongside messages of hope Wednesday as small crowds braved the pandemic to mark Remembrance Day across the country, and thousands more paid homage from their own homes. Yes, home. Stay home. That's what we were told. Don't go out. Don't go out. Let's see. Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, said, we honor those who are with us in spirit. They're with us from the safety of their homes. And let's see what the Royal Canadian Legion had to say. As Remembrance Day approaches, the Royal Canadian Legion is reminding Canadians that the best way to pay tribute to our fallen this year is at home. No, you don't want to go to the cenotaphs or anything like that, where it is, where you're outdoors, where it's cold and windy, because that vicious, sneaky COVID-19 is going to get you. Yeah, the Royal Canadian Legion, they threw Don Cherry under the bus a year ago. But good news for the Royal Canadian Legion. I guess they are about to be bought out. This is from Global News. As Canadians pay tribute to those who have served, the organizations tasked with supporting veterans are struggling to keep their doors open amid the coronavirus pandemic. It's not the government brought this on. This is a self-inflicted wound. The Royal Canadian Legions in Canada and its affiliated organizations are places where people go to drink. That's what they are. Just one day after the government announced a $20 million fund for various organizations supporting veterans, more than 350 branches of the Royal Canadian Legion remain in deep trouble, according to Nujma Bond, the communications manager for the Royal Canadian Legion. In addition to that, she said more than 20 branches have closed permanently over the course of the pandemic. Others are still on the brink. So, government decides to bail out the Royal Canadian Legion, and the Royal Canadian Legion decides to tell everyone to stay home because that is government policy. I mentioned Don Cherry. Don Cherry was Canada's most popular broadcaster. He appeared on Hockey Night in Canada for decades. He was a former coach of the Boston Bruins. He was known for his old school Canadian patriotism and for his lurid dress sense. I can't say that I much liked what he had to say about hockey, but I've always admired him as a person for his honesty, for being forthright, and for, well, I guess his self-confidence and love of life. But some cuck called Ken Campbell, writing in the Hockey News, which is now owned by Sports Illustrated, said 1 year ago today, Rogers Sportsnet fired Don Cherry over a rant that singled out immigrants for not honoring Canada's fallen soldiers by buying poppies. Forget that Cherry had not one shred of tangible evidence to back up his claim. Oh, he was fact-checked. I guess that Don Cherry had used his eyes, or maybe he talked to other people who'd used their eyes. His rant about you people who come here, you love your way of life, you love our milk and honey, these guys paid for your way of life that you enjoy in Canada, unquote, was divisive, at best, xenophobic, at worst, racist. Yeah. This is what the NHL has been reduced to. Hockey Night in Canada, meanwhile, has survived. Ratings dropped slightly for a short time. Oh, yeah, they dropped 100% for a long time because then they stopped playing hockey for months. And then they had the Stanley Cup in August in a shortened schedule. They have lost a fortune. The NHL has lost a fortune, and obviously Rogers Sportsnet has lost a fortune. But Ken Campbell here, oh, yes, it survived. Ratings dropped slightly for a short time, not enough to alarm executives at Rogers. Oh, I think the executives at Rogers are plenty alarmed because of the way that the various governments have been talking that this lockdown might last, I don't know, for the foreseeable future. Hockey Night got creative and filled the void, blah, 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 blah. Let's see. They actually caught an enormous break when Cherry gave them no other choice but to have him step down from coach's corner. He didn't step down. He was fired. Having Cherry's voice in the middle of tsunami that was late 2019 and all of 2020 would have been well awkward. Oh, dear. Hockey doesn't do awkward. God, these people make me ashamed to be Canadian. And frankly, if you've seen any of the Black Lives Matter groveling that went on this year in the NHL, well, first off, I'll just repeat, Black people don't like hockey. They don't like playing it. There are exceptions. And they don't like watching it. There are exceptions. That's their choice. That's their choice. But if the future of the NHL is going to be to declare war on Canada and its traditions, then that's going to be a bleak future for them. Oh, let's talk about anti-Pope Francis. Oh, before we do that, go from one depressing subject to another, despite this being, I got the Whitepill in first, okay? Got that in first. Obama, next Memorial Day, Trump needs to visit the tomb of the unknown Confederate soldier. Gay cowboys eating pudding, saying Head McNeck. Yes. Okay, people complaining about problems with YouTube. Don from Beyond says, today is the 400th anniversary of the Pilgrims landing the Mayflower at Plymouth Rock. Max Vitriol says, one of my ancestors was there at Plymouth Rock. Not that much of a distinction. 10% of Americans can claim the same. And now his video is gone too. Oh, Hauper says, I had an uncle who drove a Plymouth. Well, I had a father who used to sell Plymouths. So we have that in common. Ed McNeck says, Kevin, is every single position of bureaucratic power in your country controlled by an Indian? I'm assuming you mean dot, not feather. Well, that's slightly hyperbolic. But when it comes to, I don't know, rent seeking, they're very much at the top. Trudeau will eventually bring back that party costume to fit in, says Halper. Okay, so let's talk about the Vatican now. Oh, yeah, okay, let's talk about that. Vatican faults others for Cardinal McCarrick's rise, spares Francis. This is from the Associate Press. Quelle surprise! This report, investigation determined that Pope Francis merely continued his predecessor's handling of the predator until taking action when a former altar boy alleged abuse. The Vatican took the extraordinary step Tuesday of publishing its 2-year, 449-page internal investigation into the American prelate's rise and fall in a bid to restore credibility to the U.S. and Vatican hierarchies, which have been shattered by the McCarrick scandal. I'm just going to control F here. I'm going to search for gay. Nope. I'm going to search for HOMO. Oh, okay, we got one reference. Well, the findings provided new details about what the Vatican knew and when. It didn't directly blame or admit that the church's internal old boys club culture allowed McCarrick's behavior to continue unchecked. Cardinals and bishops have long been considered beyond reproach, and claims of homosexual behavior are used to discredit or blackmail prelates, so often are dismissed as rumor. There has also been a widespread but unspoken tolerance of sexually active men in what is supposed to be a celibate priesthood. Oh, yes. Okay. The church has long considered sex by priests with other adult men or women as sinful but consensual, with flags only raised in recent years when minors were involved. Okay. There was a long investigation by the American Church, John Jay College, and its report is available. It's a gay problem. It is, I don't know, it's not 100% a gay problem. It's, I don't know, was it like 97% a gay problem? I saw that Father James Martin, SJ, weighed in. Oh dear, no, now we're going to get to the bottom of this. Yeah. Well, they're not going to get to the bottom of it because the American Church and the Vatican is run by lavender mafias. And I don't need to remind James Martin of that. But apparently all of this abuse by homosexuals in the church is supposed to lead to an embrace of homosexuals by the Catholic Church. Doesn't make sense. But as I like to remind people, what happened after 9/11 with regard to the status of Islam in the United States? What happened after AIDS with regard to the status of homosexuals in the United States and elsewhere in the Western world? The bishops of the 4 U.S. dioceses where Cardinal McCarrick served, Metuchen and Newark, New Jersey, New York, and Washington, welcomed the report despite the shame the scandal has brought and the pain McCarrick caused his victims. He lamented that the diocese's founding in 1981 with McCarrick as its first bishop would always be associated with the history of Theodore McCarrick and the culture of abuse, silence, and shame that was allowed to perpetuate in the dark corners of our past. Let's see. Pope Francis commissioned the report after Archbishop Vigano issued a blistering expose of the 2-decade McCarrick cover-up in 2018, naming about 24 U.S. and Vatican officials who knew of his misconduct but failed effectively to sanction him. Vigano cited former seminarians who described the harassment and abuse they endured, while Uncle Ted, as McCarrick liked to call himself, was their bishop in New Jersey, and they were forced to sleep in his bed during weekend trips to his beach house. Yeah. Couldn't they have just beaten the shit out of him? Seriously. This is an old man we're talking about. I'm not justifying what McCarrick done, but, I think maybe if he'd been put in the hospital, not just once, but as many times as it took, and maybe if all of the priests who engaged in this kind of thing were put in the hospital, not just once, but as many times that it took, that would have made a difference. Because their superiors in the United States and the Vatican certainly didn't give a shit about it. Let's see, here's another story from Associated Press. Pope Francis vows to end sexual abuse after McCarrick report. Yes, he is the white knight who is going to save the day. How long has Francis been Pope for now? The report largely spared Francis. Again, quelle surprise. Instead, it laid the lion's share of the blame on Saint Pope John Paul II for having appointed McCarrick Archbishop of Washington in 2000 and making him a cardinal, despite having commissioned an inquiry that found he had slept with seminarians. Yes, and we'll get back to John Paul II shortly. I'll just say this. He was not fit to be a saint. Because again, the Catholic Church refers to a cultus, or what you might call a cult. And this is not a pejorative, okay? That a saint must be worthy of a universal cultus, regardless of how holy John Paul II may have been, or regardless of how groundbreaking as a theologian he may have been. And I'm not conceding either of those two things, by the way. The fact that he presided over the greatest scandal in the history of the Catholic Church since Simony and did bugger all about it, that he swanned around the world to wallow in the howling of silly people, this alone disqualifies him from being a saint. Well, Raticali writes, first things first. In a speech at the liberal Villanova University in 2013, then Cardinal Ted McCarrick boasted of his decisive influence in the election of Cardinal Bergoglio as Pope. Bergoglio equals Francis. Other actors confirmed that McCarrick's support was very important for the election. The full text, yes, it's available. Some initial observations. The mainstream media has copied and pasted the Vatican spin on McCarrick that it was all Pope John Paul II's fault. While traditional Catholics were certainly no fans of the late pontiff, isn't there more to the story? Jorge Bergoglio, McCarrick's friend, was, according to McCarrick in the above video, identified as a liberal cardinal who could be elected pope. McCarrick urged others in the College of Cardinals to talk him up. No mention of this mainstream media. Regarding the early press reports, it appears as if Bergoglio had never heard of Uncle Ted. The John Paul II cult from George Weigel to Opus Dei has some serious explaining to do. JP2's canonization is now a textbook example of why several decades should pass before even thinking about canonizing a pope, or most anyone for that matter. But they've all been canonized now. Going back to Paul VI, who presided over, the collapse of mass attendance, of the collapse of the religious orders. Yeah, that certainly qualifies anyone for sainthood. No, but it's become a protection racket. I'll canonize you, you canonize me. We're going to canonize everyone. And that way, no one ever has to face the music. From the Remnant, this is from Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano. Today, the official report of the Holy See regarding the McCarrick case has been made public. Before I express myself on its merit, I will take time to analyze its content. However, I cannot fail to note the surreal operation of mystification regarding who are the ones responsible for covering up the scandals of the deposed American cardinal, and at the same time, I cannot help expressing my indignation in seeing the same accusations of cover-up being made against me, when in fact I repeatedly denounced the inaction of the Holy See in the face of the gravity of the accusations concerning McCarrick's conduct. An unprejudiced commentator would note the more than suspicious timing of the report's publication, as well as the attempt to throw discredit upon me, accused of disobedience and negligence by those who have every interest in delegitimizing the one who brought to light an unparalleled network of corruption and immorality. The effrontery and fraudulent character shown on this occasion would seem to require at this point that we call this suggestive reconstruction of the facts the Vigano report, sparing the reader the unpleasant surprise of seeing reality adulterated once again. But this would have required intellectual honesty, even before love for justice and the truth. Unlike many characters involved in this story, I do not have any reason to fear that the truth will contradict my denunciations, nor am I in any way blackmailable. Anyone who launches unfounded accusations with the sole purpose of distracting the attention of public opinion will have the bitter surprise of finding that the operation conducted against me will not have any effect other than giving further proof of the corruption and bad faith of those for whom too long have been silent, made denials, and turned their gaze elsewhere, who today must be held accountable. The Vatican fiction continues. This is from Thomas Williams at Breitbart. Veteran Vatican journalist Robert Moynihan blasted the Vatican's long-awaited McCarrick report, writing Tuesday that the text brings injury and obfuscation rather than healing and clarity. In a scathing review, Moynihan, founder and president of Inside the Vatican, declares that after 2 years of careful investigations, the 460-page report on former Cardinal Theodore McCarrick and his serial homosexual abuse leaves us still in the ecclesial swamp of cover-up evasion and scapegoating of others. Instead of exploring the true causes of the disgraced former cardinal's meteoric rise to power and influence in the church, the report places the blame on the shoulders of four scapegoats, Moynihan states, namely Pope John Paul II, his personal secretary, Cardinal Stanislav Dziwisz, Pope Benedict XVI, and the whistleblowing Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, without whom the report would never have been written in the first place? Well, the personal secretary of Saint Pope John Paul II took money and gifts, substantial money and gifts, from a pedophile. Yeah, it's a Mexican pedophile. And look, one of the problems with John Paul II, and I'm referring to Marcial Maciel, who is the founder of the Legion of Christ and Regnum Christi, and National Catholic owned the National Catholic Register, for which I used to write for. But John Paul II was an actor, and actors are vain people, and you can see his vanity throughout his pontificate. Not least, as I say, that he traveled while Rome burned. A person who needs constant affirmation of love, particularly publicly, is not fit to be a leader. And John Paul II was not fit to be Pope of the Catholic Church. Oh, the remarkable thing about this report is that its final impression gives that four of the leading churchmen of our time, two popes and two of their closest collaborators, were the ones most responsible for allowing McCarrick to continue his career of serial abuse without being stopped by any church authority, Moynihan adds. He alleges that an initial reading of the text suggests an effort to absolve present church leadership by asserting that the Vatican of today did nothing wrong at all with regard to the case of ex-Cardinal McCarrick, and that enabling the corrupt prelate was largely the fault of four men who are no longer in active service. Yes, and I suppose we can look at the people who became bishops and archbishops under the wing of McCarrick. Look, nothing is going to be done about this until the Catholic Church realizes that it has a serious homosexual problem and that homosexuals need to be rooted out. They need to be removed root and branch from the priesthood, from the parish priest level right up to the top. They all need to be kicked out. That's enough on that distressing story. Biden COVID advisor says a U.S. lockdown of 4 to 6 weeks could control pandemic and revive economy. And my response to that is, to Dr. Michael Osterholm, is perhaps you could have a chat with Boris Johnson and ask him how the repeated lockdowns have worked in Britain, Scotland, and Wales. They've been an absolute disaster. We heard similar things from Justin Trudeau, but just in the past couple of days. This is like living through coverage of the Vietnam War. Again, we had to destroy the village in order to save it. That's what these people have been reduced to. Osterholm said that the government could borrow enough money to pay for a package that would cover lost income for individuals and governments during a shutdown. We could really watch ourselves cruising into the vaccine availability in the first and second quarter of next year while bringing back the economy long before that. Well, the economy has, to a very large extent, been brought back, and now Biden's top COVID guy wants to wreck it. Luckily, he's not going to get a chance to wreck the economy during Christmas, because you know that he would do it if he could do it. Osterholm, who serves as director of the Center of Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota, said earlier this week that the country is headed towards COVID hell. Cases are rising as more people grow tired of wearing masks and social distancing, suffering from so-called pandemic fatigue. Oh, so-called pandemic fatigue. Is it? We could pay for a package right now to cover all of the wages, lost wages for individual workers, for losses to small companies, to medium-sized companies, or city, state, county governments. We could do all of that. Wow. It's as if there's no need for anyone to work. It's as if there's no need for anyone to engage in productive activity. Money printer go brrr. That's all you need. That's all you need. We've been hearing about long form COVID or whatever it's been called. I'm kind of suspicious about this. Here's a story. This could be the new chronic fatigue syndrome. A story from Reuters. Many COVID-19 survivors are likely to be at greater risk of developing mental illness, psychiatrists said on Monday. After a large study found 20% of those infected with coronavirus are diagnosed with a psychiatric disorder within 90 days. I'd like to know more about the age of these people who were studied, given that the average age of those killed by COVID-19 is something like 82 or 84. Obviously, most of those people are already at serious risk of mental illness or have developed it already. Anxiety, depression, and insomnia were most common among recovered COVID-19 patients in the study who developed mental health problems. The researchers from Britain's Oxford University also found significantly higher risks of dementia, a brain impairment condition. Again, did they have dementia before then? Again, if you're talking about people who are well into their 80s, it is highly likely that they're already suffering from dementia. But I will say this, and I saw a comment at Monterey Peninsula College, which I thought was to the point. Going back to, what is it now? February? January? We've been terrifying people with the idea that every other person on earth presents a direct, fatal threat to them. We told people to wear masks. We forced people to wear masks. We have forced people to stay 6 feet or 2 meters away from other people. We have put plexiglass partitions between people at every possible opportunity. We've put idiotic little signs on the floors of stores saying, walk in this direction, or no, stand here. You must stand here. We have banned people from going to parks, going to beaches, to going outside. We have declared that thousands, tens of thousands of businesses and millions of workers are inessential. And we were told that, oh no, we have to flatten the curve. Oh no. Well, we'll flatten the curve some more. No, we're not flattening the curve anymore. And this will probably be over by Easter, or it'll probably be over by summer. It'll probably be over, I don't know, by the beginning of autumn. And no, it's going to last forever now. And I've been going on for many, many years about the desocialization of our countries. That people want to do what they want to do, and they want to do it because they want to do it. They do not want to have random interactions with people, because that could lead to awkwardness. It could lead to unpleasantness, and it could lead to, a loss of selfishness. You hear people talk using this term emotional labor. What emotional labor? What does that mean? Oh, it means listening to people. It means listening to people and responding to them when they speak to you. And it is now commonplace for people to complain of the costs of emotional labor. Even before the rise of the internet, it was becoming increasingly possible to live a life where you had nothing to do with people that you hadn't chosen to be with. But now, with the rise of the internet and all the various kinds of delivery surfaces of media, food, all sorts of goods, do we need other people at all? Well, man is a social animal, as Aristotle famously pointed out. And the effects of this desocialization in recent decades have been dire. But we decided to go into overdrive this year. So I have no doubt that there is an epidemic of mental illness, acute mental illness in our society now. And if these maniac governments that we have are not stopped, one of the reasons I was so intent on Trump winning re-election, is it would put an end to this COVID madness. It already made it clear it was ending. He was ending it. America was going back to business. America was going back to normal. There was no talk of a new normal. There was no talk of a great reset from him. Yeah, you're all going to die. Stay away from everyone. That screen in front of you is the only humanity that you need. Don't see friends. Don't see family, because they're going to infect you and kill you, or you're going to infect them or kill them. Yes, it is clearly driving people crazy. And one of the ways in which we can see that is in the explosion in the number of drug overdoses that is observed where I live and is observed all over North America. And I fully expect to see soon enough that there has been let's say, a very concerning rise in North America in alcoholism. Yeah. So, any more disastrous news, COVID related here? Let's see what William Briggs. He says, don't believe the manufactured second wave panic. Well, the media says it's true, so it must be true, right? You wouldn't want to disagree with the media. That would make you unpatriotic, perhaps a traitor. And there's a kind of thrill there for oh no, we're all going to die. Ooh, and I'm part of it too. Let's go to lockdown skeptics here. Toby Young, was vaccine announcement delayed to help Biden win? I don't know. Seems like a pretty good chance. Seems like a pretty good chance. A surprising number of Britons would be willing to take the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine, provided politicians take it first. Yes, Peter Hitchens was on for the longest time. I guess when, Gordon Brown was prime minister, or Tony Blair, that you're insisting that we take this multi-vaccine. Have your children taken it? They would never answer the question. One would think that they would say, yes, of course my children have taken it, and here they are. If you really want to get people on board, but the caginess with which they regarded that question suggested they had not taken this multi-vaccine for the reason that they didn't trust it. Let's see, according to a poll carried out by the Daily Mail, 74% of people said they either definitely or probably would be willing to take it, while just 18% said they definitely or probably would not be. But the sting in the tail is that 43% of respondents said politicians should take it first. Looks like Boris may have to do a John Gummer, who famously fed a burger to his 4-year-old daughter in 1990 to prove that eating British beef carried no risk of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. Apart from the amusing response to the political question, the Daily Mail poll makes for pretty depressing reading. The poll also showed that Pfizer's breakthrough jab was the best news of the year for many and as significant as the fall of the Iron Curtain. Oh, dear. Oh, yes. And apparently this is a shot in the arm. Various people. Yeah, I never would have come up. With that one. Again, I think this has to do with the disappearance of editors. Because, old style editor would remove shot in the arm and say, can't you come up with a better simile than that? Because if you can't, I will. Or guess what? We won't use it. It's not necessary to use these metaphors. I was talking about placebo yesterday. Now, this is interesting. On Tuesday, it was mentioned in Lockdown Skeptics that half of those in the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine trials received a placebo. Unless a Pfizer employee comes forward and notifies us, we shouldn't be too sure of this. A placebo is an inactive substance. In vaccine trials, this would be a saline solution jab. However, we know that the young Brazilian volunteer who recently died, who was in the AstraZeneca control group, had been given the meningitis vaccine. Yet this was glibly referred to by many in the trial as a placebo. Another vaccine is not a placebo. In a paper written in 2017 by members of the trial unit at Copenhagen University, it is made clear that the not giving a true placebo in vaccine trials is to mask potentially harmful effects of the trial vaccine, and it is common practice. And on that bombshell, I think I'm going to wrap up the show. I'll take a final look at the chat here. Manfred von Thistlebaum says, what is the test false positive rate? We don't know. The latrine wallows are telling us, back in February, March, when we said it wasn't a big deal, that xenophobia was the real problem, we didn't know much about it. Well, I don't know how much we know about it now, except we do know some things. We know who it kills. It kills old people, very old people, and the old people who it doesn't kill are, for want of a better word, fat, very fat. Jonathan Pohl says media hits, yes. Now they are only in part on BitChute and SoundCloud, and referring to here things being removed from YouTube. Watch Pole Position this weekend, says Emma Nimpton. Yes, here. Oh, dang, massive number of DDoS attacks from Asia targeting the Northeast. I wonder why that would be. MCT says, there are plenty of laws to protect guys' money, even in wartime, but there's nothing on the book says it's a man's life his own. It says a man's life his own. KMG, thank you. Happy evening. Oh, well, happy evening to you as well. Thomas Henderson says, only epidemic in history where we locked up the healthy along with the sick. Earl Pipe says, imagine being a politician and not being able to lie convincingly or use your family to score political cred. Shake my head. Yes, indeed. I don't know. Perhaps, Boris has always had the shaggy hair, and he's always had that, I'm just a bad little boy expression. Maybe he could get a hairbrush or a comb and put some sort of substance, some sort of pomade, not too much, just so that his hair, is in one place. This might give an impression of seriousness, a newfound seriousness. We're talking about Carl Jung. Goose says, the book Aryan Christ really demystifies Jung. I recommend it. Just be warned that you won't respect him as much after reading it. Charles Nunno, hello, Charles. Emotional labor is the most retarded term I've ever heard. I don't believe it. Well, yeah. You see, going back to what I was saying about desocialization, people were previously understood to have reciprocal obligations, particularly when you're talking about family or friends or perhaps even co-workers. But it all seems to work in one direction now. They should listen to me, but I don't have to listen to them. Or maybe none of us have to listen to any of us. It's useful, just one reason why it's useful to listen to other people is that you can gain clues as to whether these people are headed for a crack up. Okay. I think that's... Head McNeck says, anxiety, depression, insomnia are things directly attributable to the lockdowns. Of course, all of this talk about the new normal, and we're not getting back to the old normal, and it's going to be worse, right? It's going to be much, much worse. That's not the way, say, FDR did it during the Depression. He was useless in relieving the Depression. He became president in 1933, and the Depression, it got worse in 1937, but he kept this message of positivity, because telling people that things are only going to get worse is not a good way to inspire sacrifices from people. And I think we're on the verge of this breaking down completely. And again, I would say Britain is probably the first place where this is going to happen. So insurrection, an actual insurrection of size in Britain would not surprise me at all. Final comment from Jonathan Ferguson: tightly knit families are the building blocks of successful nations. Just so. I will be back on the air tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Tomorrow is Theater Thursday, and as mentioned previously, I will discuss Robert Zemeckis' animation live action combo, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. On the book club on Friday, I am going to be discussing David Mikish's Stanley Kubrick, American filmmaker. If you like the show or any part of it, I appreciate it if you click on the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not done so already. If you would like to support this live stream with a donation, my PayPal account is at kevin_grace@hotmail.com. Once again, kevin_grace@hotmail.com. If you are Canadian, you can send money to me directly, a donation directly at kevingrace@shaw.ca. And I will leave you, as ever, with this: in these days of social atomization and civilizational collapse, I do dearly wish that you, my dear listeners and viewers, manage to form a genuine human connection in order to ease the burden. Good night.